Phyllis Bennis is a fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies. She joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Phyllis, thanks so much for being with us here on Al Jazeera. I want to ask you first about the timing of all this. Iran and the U.S. just engaged in talks in Oman, and it's expected at this stage that there will be more talks, possibly in the coming days. What view will the Trump administration be taking regarding these arrests?
I'm not sure that these arrests are going to be a specific focus of the talks when they continue. What we're seeing in terms of timing is that this is in between the Oman talks, as you mentioned, which are supposed to start again soon. But in the meantime, we have a plan now for this coming Wednesday that the Israeli Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu, will be coming to Washington. That's a week earlier than he was supposed to come. So there's no question that he is going to be raising a demand for a much harsher position towards Iran, even than that of the Trump administration, probably saying that he's going to demand absolutely no enrichment of uranium, no missiles, and no support for Iran's allies in the region. It's essentially a call for Iranian surrender. So there will be a big question about whether the U.S. is going to go along with the Israeli position or maintain its own position, which historically has been slightly different than that of Israel, particularly on the question of the nuclear enrichment, where Israel has for a long time demanded no enrichment. Iran should not have the capability of ever building a nuclear weapon because it's the same technology ultimately, whether it's for a weapon or for use for science or other civilian uses. The U.S. position was Iran should not be allowed to have a weapon, which means that there could be enrichment, there could be a civilian nuclear program, as there has been for decades in Iran, ironically enough, started by the United States back in the 1960s when it wanted to be sure that a U.S. company got the contract with Iran to build its first nuclear reactor.
Phyllis, let me follow up on something you just mentioned. If Prime Minister Netanyahu were to utilize this news of the arrest to try to convince President Trump to take a harsher line towards Iran, do you think that that's something that Trump would want to do at this stage?
You know, I don't think that Trump or the Trump administration ever really supported the Iranian protesters, for instance. He made claims, we have your back, we will be there to support you. Of course, there was nothing they could do without a military intervention, which would have made everything worse. And a military intervention at this point would make everything worse. So I don't think that this is likely to change the position of the U.S. It will be a convenient talking point. You see, this really is a repressive regime, which it certainly is. That's not something that the U.S. has ever expressed any serious problem with. The problem is they don't like what it's doing globally. They don't really care that much about what it does inside the country. I don't think the U.S. is any more likely to claim that or to make real on a claim that it's going to support the 3 or 4 arrested reformist leaders than it did to supposedly support the protesters, even when thousands of them were in the streets and thousands were being killed in the streets in those protests. This could be a good talking point, but not much on the substance.
Phyllis, whether or not these arrests actually come up in the next round of talks, supposing that they happen as expected in the days to come, from your vantage point, is the Iranian government attempting to send a message of the arrests? And if so, is it more for domestic consumption or international consumption, or both?
I think it's actually for both. Domestically, the Iranian regime has pulled back from its incredibly harsh punishment of the protesters. This is one way of saying, well, we've stopped killing people in the streets, but don't get the idea that we're going to support a reformist move. We should keep in mind, these are not people who have been calling for the overthrow of the regime, the replacement of the Islamic Republic. These are people, these leaders who have just been arrested, are people who have played a much more moderate role in Iranian politics. They are calling for economic reforms, social reforms, but within the context of the existing government. Internationally, this is again a message to the international community that they may have pulled back from the harshest of these responses to the protests, but they are not about to allow a new version of the Iranian government to take over the diplomatic reigns.
And Phyllis, do you think that this news could lead eventually to more demonstrations going forward, or would it just have the opposite effect?
I don't think we know, partly because the internet is still largely inaccessible in Iran. So we're not getting good information about what's happening inside. So I don't think we know exactly what the position of the protesters might be. I'm assuming that there will be a variety of positions. But I think that we do have to look at what is and is not going to be on the agenda for any of these talks. What we have on the agenda are the very hardline demands from the US and even harsher demands from Israel in terms of enrichment, in terms of the ballistic missile limitations, and ending support for Iran's allies, essentially a call for surrender. What's not on the agenda is the rest of what's going on in the region. The Israeli nuclear arsenal is not mentioned. It's clearly something that is not in keeping with the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Israel has refused to sign. But it is a very important destabilizing factor in the region. It is not talking about the U.S. Armada, the USS Abraham Lincoln, a giant aircraft carrier with more than 5,000 troops on board, 90 some odd planes and helicopters for military use. So this, and then plus you have somewhere between 40 and 50,000 U.S. troops on bases surrounding Iran. All of this is very threatening to Iran and is not on the agenda for these talks. So there's a significant limitation on what the talks are going to cover and how far they will go. If the US were serious about supporting the people of Iran, supporting the protesters, supporting the reformers, the first thing they would do is lift the sanctions that are crippling the economy, crippling the lives of so many Iranians, including, of course, the protesters, and to go into serious diplomacy without preconditions to avoid a war, which will be devastating for the people of Iran and inevitably will likely spread to the rest of the region.
All right. Phyllis Bennis, fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies, thanks so much for joining us here at Al Jazeera. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.